This is the Tech Currents Podcast, real talk about technology and stories from working in the tech world. All opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the host and guests. And now, here is your host, Sam Cavaliere.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Tech Currents Podcast. I am your host, Sam Cavaliere. I am joined once again by my good friend and co-host, Ron Melanson. Ron, thank you for joining us.
Hello, Sam. Always a pleasure. Looking forward to today's episode.
Excellent. We are joined once again by our friend of the program, the ever present on LinkedIn. Amy is always called out on very particular topics. You can expect to find Amy. If she is not on there, she will be called out to come in and weigh in on them. We are joined by Amy Miller. Amy.
Good morning, gentlemen. Yes, there's like a bat signal or something that goes up.
That is what
just
happens.
tag
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
It's just show up like a bad penny.
Yeah, that's right. And I know on one of the postings recently, somebody referred to the Amy Miller's Army.
Mm-hmm. The Amy Army.
The
and that's the funny part. Like when
Army.
the trolling begins, I don't even have to do anything. I just kind of sit back and go, well, this is about to get spicy, and I just wait.
We had such a great time on the last episode that we had you. We talked about how we had to have you back.
So much
we have struggled to try to arrange our calendars. We were finally able to do that. And so we are very grateful that we were able to make all of this come together and get you on again, because there's always so much going on. We now actually have a regular segment on the program that we refer to as LinkedIn Lunacy.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, LinkedIn Lunacy, because we actually dedicated a whole episode to LinkedIn Lunacy. A couple episodes back, we dedicated the whole thing to LinkedIn Lunacy, because there seems to be no shortage of just craziness. I'm actually starting to ask myself if the people of LinkedIn actually, do they even are they even moderating anymore, or is it just like one big freaking free for all out there now?
I think
it's Lord of the Flies.
It is. It's very much Lord of the Flies. I've actually been watching Yellow Jackets. If anybody is watching that show, I forget if it's HBO or Showtime, one of those. But I've been watching Yellow Jackets, and it actually occurred to me this weekend watching the latest episode, like, oh my gosh, this is like Lord of the Flies, but with girls. And that's LinkedIn. I also had a nightmare that LinkedIn provided an anonymous feature where you could post and comment anonymously, like you can on Facebook now. And that went horribly, as you can imagine. Like, I woke up in a cold sweat just thinking of how badly that would go for society.
Oh my God, that would be epically horrible.
Imagine.
Hey, with the hundreds of people that listen to our podcast, be careful, because there might be one or two of them on the product team.
The hundreds.
hundreds of listeners. Somebody's there scrolling that down, saying, "Okay, we need a thumbs down button, and we also need to be able to post anonymously." Bob, get this on the whiteboard, quick! It's 2 sprints.
So it's important to point out, though, that the last time Amy was on, we only had like 3 listeners, because it was like your wife, my wife, and then,
Amy's dog, Zoe.
She's a loyal girl. That's so
Zoe is awesome, by the way. Thank you by the way, just for the record, LinkedIn is a professional network. You really shouldn't be posting pet photos.
Oh.
Somebody said something about it needing to be like, people want it to be more like work. I'm like, joke's on you. I work in a dog-friendly office.
That's right. There is actually a group called LinkedIn Dogs.
Yeah, Dogs of LinkedIn.
Dogs of LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah.
My favorite place.
I know I'm actually I follow that. So we're going to kind of dive into, as I said, more of the LinkedIn lunacy, if you will, because there are certain things that I think are worth diving into a little bit more. Some things I think we can pretty much retire, as we talked about prior to the program. The open to work banner. I have now taken to the opinion that anybody who brings that up is literally just looking for visibility. They do it
agree.
on purpose to be contrary,
Yeah.
to spin people up.
Yeah.
And no shortage of that going on.
And
But
I feel like they must be following the no bad press playbook, because it just looks silly. And even if let me just suspend logic for a moment and let me say I agree the banner's not a great look. I don't agree with that at all in any way, shape, or form. But let's just pretend that I do.
right.
Knowing that it has been beaten to death for so long, not to mention the fact that the banner didn't even exist until 2020. It was actually developed as a COVID response because of this massive like downturn in the market. And people are talking about it like it's something that's been around for 20 years and been like thoroughly tested. And like it's literally been around for 5 minutes in the grand scheme of things when you have more than 5 minutes of experience in this field. And so knowing that it's relatively new by comparison, knowing that it's been discussed and debated to death in those 5 years, knowing that like most people generally are either ambivalent or supportive, to show that you're like so anti for all of these really ridiculous privileged bias reasons, how do you think that makes you look? That's the part that just mystifies me. Like these people have to know that they're showing up in a bozo costume and they're still doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. I like I said, the
I don't
only
understand the
thing I
logic
can
behind
think
it.
of is they're doing it for,
Mhm.
as you said, no, any press is good press kind of thing. Because
It's gotta be.
I can't, I can't fathom a reason why that's okay. But
I'm stymied.
at this point,
It boggles my mind. And we see, I know, Amy, you've been doing this more years than me, just because you've been more engaged on LinkedIn than me. But the last year and a half, it just feels like it's the same. Every day I logged in,
Yeah.
and should your resume be 2 pages? Should it be a PDF? Should it be a Word doc? Should it be text file? Should it be a latex code? Okay, then we got another whole thing going on that says, if you give me a cover letter, I'm not going to read it, so I don't want cover letters.
Oh God.
Then you're going to have somebody else that says, if you show up 15 minutes early to an interview, I'm not going to hire you. And then we had another
I saw
lunatic that was going
one.
on,
I saw that
and
one.
on. And oh goodness, it wasn't. Oh, the other one was, if you give me a cover letter, I won't interview you.
Yeah.
There was a third one or fourth one where they were talking about, heaven forbid your CV spill onto a third page, or else, the skies will darken and thou shalt be
Right.
struck by lightning.
Right. You will be smitten. Smoke.
It's boggles
Smoke.
my mind. And the other thing that I found crazy recently, and maybe we should talk a little bit about this, and you were a victim, Amy, was the fake profiles.
Oh my
Ooh.
gosh.
And not only fake profiles, and in your instance, we could talk specifically about them stealing your persona, but even the fake profiles. I just was involved in a conversation, and someone sent me, "Oh, it looks like you're looking for a role. Send me your information." And I looked it up. Their connections was a HTTP hyperlink to some bogus website, right?
Yep.
So, but it said that they had like 200,000 connections and more.
Right.
And then they had like 2 followers, and everything else beneath it was all bogus. And it was frightening to see, because the more desperate job seeker or the less studious observer could potentially fall for
all the time
that sort of a farming experience.
We hear about it more and more out there.
Right. And the interesting piece is, we've seen, and this is the other corollary to that, is these fake profiles pop up and people reach out and contact them. They're immediately come back with, "Hey, we loved your information. You're a great fit. But, I know this person, Jamie over here on Fiverr, and this person can really up level your resume and your CV for the next time. So by the way, here's their information." So everything's an upsell. and everything is, not everything, but most things have become totally bogus. And your account was effectively your persona was hijacked.
It was.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
There were apparently several. So I came across one because two people actually contacted me about it. One person said, "Hey, are you trying to join my group?" And I was like, "I don't think so. I thought I was already in your group." So I went and looked. I'm like, "Yeah, I joined your group in like 2021 when groups were kind of still a thing." But apparently this person was trying to join this job seeker group on LinkedIn. And then one of my girlfriends texted me and I was like, "Hey, I know this isn't you." And so then I jump on and I start going through and, mass reporting comments, reporting profiles. I searched my name and title and found a few more. So I'm reporting those. And then I made the post. So that was actually Sunday night. I'm like, okay, you know what? I got 100,000+ followers, whatever I have. Somebody's going to know something. So I kind of put it out as a warning, and then thankfully have some contacts who actually work at LinkedIn. So they immediately were like, we're on it internally as well. So I had a bunch of people that were thankfully reporting the profiles and the comments, and then a couple people on the inside helping to escalate internally. But it's messy. And so I am verified. I have my little verified badge because I have gone through the steps to make sure I'm truly me. I'm a top voice. I had the purple banner on. No one else did. So there are tells, to Ron's point, there are tells when you're looking at a profile to determine, is this person valid? But a lot of people don't look for those tells. They're not savvy or thinking about it. And so that was the really scary thing. So that's why I tried to kind of point out, look, I'm verified. I have this tell, this profile doesn't. And I don't know. It was really frustrating. Apparently there were a lot more than even what I'd found, but the internal team found them and took them down, apparently.
Okay, so they are out there and paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
So that's good to know.
Well,
okay.
Since it was highlighted, I mean, would they have if I didn't have people nudging? I don't know, to be honest.
Okay. That's actually good to know.
I think the key thing is report. Like, we don't want to go on like a reporting spree and report everything and anything that looks a little weird. But if you're very confident, like, this does not seem right, I know that person and this person is not the person I know, report.
Okay. That's awesome. That's good to know. I mean, because that's what we got to do. I know after I saw your posting, I actually went out and reported that profile. I had to dig for it.
Yeah.
I had to dig for it.
Same.
I had to look pretty damn hard.
Yeah.
But I did find
Amy Miller is not the most uncommon name, as it turns out.
I know.
For the record, there's over 100 pages.
Yeah,
about 8 to 10
no
per
joke.
page.
Like, that was the part that I was astounded by, right? I was like, wait a minute. I thought I had to double check, make sure I wasn't looking for John Smith. Because I was like, holy cow, there's a lot of Amy Millers out there.
I'm telling you. I don't want the innocent Amy Millers in HR in some, factory in Wisconsin getting flagged. That wouldn't be nice, but
No. Definitely don't want that. But no, there was a surprisingly large amount though. So
yes, very, very large.
Very much so. So
and they hijacked your profile picture.
And they stole my picture.
Yeah, that's
So I was actually trying to figure out, like, what is the end game on some of those. The only thing I could think of is maybe a posting as you in a fake account, trying to get people's information, and then maybe coming back and, offering services.
Well, and those were the
Amy
comments.
recommended.
Exactly. Exactly what you were talking about, Ron. All of the comments because you can go to someone's profile and click on comments and see all the comments they've left, right? And so that's what I did. Every single comment was a reply to someone on some random thread somewhere. Hi, it looks like you're looking for a new career. Can I introduce so-and-so, blah, 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 at gmail.com to help with your resume? Every single one. It was a clear copy paste, just repeated. And that's a violation of LinkedIn's own terms of service.
Right.
So
Crazy.
Yeah.
It literally is nuts. I don't even know. It's gotten out of control. I've had and we've talked about this on a couple of episodes where I had the recruiter come to me and say, "Hey, send me your resume." I send it. Oh, well, this is not ATS optimized. I got my friend on Fiverr who can do that. And I'm like, no, dude, I just paid for that. That's not happening. And then that was the last time I heard from that recruiter. So
yeah. So, I mean, buyer beware, profile
Very
user
much
beware.
so. Yeah.
And don't
and here's the thing. Recruiters, real recruiters do not charge candidates money ever. That
Right.
is a number one tell flag. No recruiter, because recruiters by definition are paid by an organization to deliver talent. I don't care if it's internal, external, RPO, I don't care. Recruiters are paid by companies. If a recruiter is charging a candidate or a job seeker, I don't care what that's not recruiting. You are no longer a recruiter. Maybe you're taking your recruiter hat off because you've clocked out at 5 p.m. and now you're doing some resume writing or some coaching after hours. But in that capacity, you're a resume writer or you're a coach. You're not a recruiter.
We're going to visit that in a minute, because that actually dovetails very nicely into a discussion about the qualifications of some of these so-called coaches that are out there. The the topic that I wanted to kind of touch on, and it actually is directly references something Ron had mentioned earlier in the pre-recording discussion, and that was you were part of a panel recently, live streamed, and we do aspire to do the live streaming. I am actively working on making that a reality for us.
Nice.
So stay tuned. We will start doing that for folks at some point. But I digress. Specifically, the topic that you were a panel on was related to not just ATS discussion, but it was AI. There was AI, and I think realistically, there are more and more companies, and I don't want to, well, there are companies that are offering AI as part of their ATS
For sure.
capabilities, which only makes sense. At that point, it's, we spent a lot of time talking with my friend T. Morris about how these AI and LLMs are being trained on all kinds of things, using all kinds of materials, including some of those larger players who are doing things that would otherwise be verboten and they know better. But okay, notwithstanding that, the fact is more of these ATS companies that offer these HR systems, if you will, the greenhouses, the workdays of the world and stuff are it's only a next logical step for them to start integrating AI. But we're also seeing things that I've seen commented on where companies are using things like ChatGPT and they're running scripts to score resumes. So people's resumes are being uploaded into ChatGPT. We've seen it. Now, whether or not it's a good idea or not, that's kind of what we're going to start talking about. Is it something that, now we're talking about, if you're taking people's resumes and upload that were given to you as a recruiter and uploading them into ChatGPT, are you putting yourself and your company you're representing at risk because of the PII that you are now feeding into a public AI? So I guess really I guess the question, if somebody was like, okay, if you were going to ask me, okay, Sam, that's a lot of stuff, what's the actual question? So, talk to us about what we're seeing more around AI and in what's happening in recruiting using AI and what that's all about.
I have a lot of thoughts on both of those very intertwined topics. So starting with the availability of the tools. So a few years back, we had bought a really cute little Jetta. My kids were all grown now and have their own cars. So we didn't need the big, 7-seater SUV anymore. So we bought this sporty little Jetta. And I was reading up on it, and I saw this cool feature. I'm like, yes, this is awesome. I ran out to the car, and I'm sitting in the car for a while. And my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to figure out this parking assist thing. And he's like, we don't have that. I'm like, no, it's right here. See, it says right here on the internet, the features. And he's like, Ames, we don't have that. I'm like, no, I read about it. It's right here. What do you mean?
If it's on the internet, it must be true.
A feature can exist and not be purchased. A feature could even be purchased, like that god awful, you know how it turns the car off at stoplights?
Yes,
You have
right,
to hit the button to make it stop doing that. A feature could be purchased and not used. So this is what I would caution people. Do I believe that ATS providers and HR software providers are building these features? Oh, 100%. I believe that is happening. Do I believe that those features are immediately being implemented? No. Do I believe those features are even being used or trusted by the majority of recruiters? Also, no. So yes, a feature exists. Does that mean I have it? Of course not. Does it mean I would use it even if I did? Also, no. So once again, as I say every day of the week and twice on Sunday, if you want to know what is being used and how it's being used, go talk to the user. Asking ChatGPT, which we're about to get into, is only going to tell you what is potentially available and been fed to it already. It's not going to tell you what is actually happening in that person's seat. And that is my biggest beef with this noise and nonsense on the internet. Like, I really don't care what Super Bowl ad you watched. It is irrelevant to my workflow. You don't get to tell me that just because you saw a marketing slick, that means you know how I do my job and what tools I possess. You don't. So that's number one. Now, as far as ChatGPT reviewing and scoring resumes, I have used ChatGPT a handful of times in my life. I use the web version. I don't log in. I don't have the app. I'm just not into it. I got games to play or grandbaby pictures to look at. Like, it is just not interesting to me, and I don't find it particularly useful or helpful for me. Let me tell you what I also will not do. And you made a very important point, Sam, about PII. We have, okay, so when a resume is uploaded into a career site, application, whatever, goes into an ATS, that is locked down data. Ron and I work for the same company. He does not have the level of access that I do to that data. Ron has need to know access based on being a hiring manager, having a certain profile in that system, in that tool. This is true at every company I've ever worked for. Hiring managers, support staff, schedulers, whatever, they have a certain level of access that is based on their part of the process. As a recruiter, I have a higher level of access to most things, but there are still going to be caveats with like confidential searches, executive level candidates, HR specific data that I don't need to have permission to view. So all of those things are locked down. Okay. And a resume with all of that contact information, with all of that work history, all of those personal things specific to the person uploading the resume is considered PII. Now, we all saw a post where a company leader, I think he might have been like a director of marketing or something like that, not a recruiter.
No, not a recruiter. Correct.
This person posts bragging, because that's what it was. He was bragging.
Yes, it was his hack.
Taking PII, uploading it into an unsecure, third-party, barely controlled tool, and having that tool make suggestions. Now, I don't have a problem with the suggestion making. I think that AI is good for parsing information and proposing solutions. The decision that does need to be on the human, though. At the end of it, a human should make the decision on what to do with that information. But the mere fact that this man had the audacity to upload people's information without their permission is absolutely obscene. And did you notice how fast that post came down when I asked him what his lawyer thought?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't even pay attention to that. You know, it's funny because, you know, we all work for larger tech firms. The one I work for is not even, you know, like, I mean, there are layoffs larger than the company I work for right now, but that's okay. Listen, we have our place in the tech sphere.
Absolutely.
That being said, there are an incredible amount of smaller startups across all segments, and they have a tendency when spinning up to work fast and loose.
Absolutely. Exactly the phrase that came to my mind.
Yeah, they work fast and loose with all kinds of data,
Yep.
all kinds of
Yep.
policies, all kinds of rules, and it's not until the first time somebody
Yep.
sues
Yep.
or they have they have a counsel who is, savvy enough to say, "Don't do that."
Absolutely.
Um, that at that point, any of that gets like put
It's
back under
a
control.
dangerous, dangerous game. And
Yeah.
it was so, and the fact that he tagged his head of talent, whatever that means, I don't know how big their recruiting team is. Apparently there's at least one guy. But the fact that he tagged the head of talent, and this is also the other interesting point. Did y'all notice this? So I really studied this. I spent a lot of time on this post, looking at the
Okay.
profiles, screenshotting because I knew it was going to go away. And I did a lot of like intensive research into all parties involved and everything that was being said. We
Okay.
went from a claim that this 12x'd our productivity and saved our head of talent, probably a single recruiter, so much time. Okay, that was the claim. And then we started inspecting and asking questions and whatabouts. And then it was, oh, this was just a Friday afternoon, experiment. Which is it, sir? Did you
Well,
save your recruiter 12 times the amount of time and improved hiring by so much and hired all the right people faster because, or was this a Friday afternoon experience? Because both of those things cannot be true.
Well, I think that brings us back to the attention grabbing,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are folks who, are there's a lot of attention grabbing
Yeah,
going on
for sure.
because it has become an occupation,
Yeah.
right?
It's the influencer economy
The
is
fact
what
that
we've built.
the fact that influencer was ever even an occupation is something that still makes me kind of crazy, right? And
Yeah.
somebody could turn around and they could absolutely make the accusation, well, Sam, by doing the podcast and then advertising it, aren't you attempting to be an influencer? And the answer is, um, no. I would make the argument that we've been doing what we do for the sake of helping out job seekers
Absolutely.
because the market is so bad and
Absolutely.
but I mean it's a fair comparison, and so I'm happy to I'm happy to field that question if it comes up. But to that end, I think there's a lot of that's happening. And realistically, the this kind of slides into kind of the next topic that I see happening here, right? And this notion of scoring algorithms,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't see it so much from recruiters or talent acquisition, people in
Yeah,
the
because we
talent
hate it.
acquisition business. I don't see it so much in that as much as I see it from candidates.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's candidates who are looking for someone or something to blame
100%. Human nature.
for where the current situation that they find themselves in. And I appreciate that, right? I
Yeah.
do appreciate
But
that.
I
And
will I will tell you though, and it's interesting because I saw this on a few folks. These scoring companies, these scoring tools that exist on the internet. The very first time you go there, they give it to you for free. And they say, Amy, your CV rates a 60.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want, for a mere $99 a month subscription, we can help you make that better. Okay. And what do? You plop down your credit card. You say, because I've got to get past the ATS bot, right? To get my score up. And then you run a near identical resume through the system and suddenly you're an 85. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
did my resume suddenly get better? Or is it because I'm paying you a subscription, you gave me a better
Exactly.
number to make me feel good? So yeah, there's a bit of that going on. And there's also a tremendous amount of gamesmanship
Mm-hmm.
playing on the heartstrings of the under or unemployed.
And that sets me off into a fiery burning rage. And so to your point about influencing, Sam, I know a lot of people look at me, I have a large following, I've got a YouTube channel, I'm kind of doing all those influencer things. I did my taxes on Sunday yesterday. I did my taxes yesterday. And my income from all of this influencing, which I donate to an animal shelter. Any guesses how much money I made from YouTube last year in 2024? How much money do you think I made from YouTube?
I don't know. I'm waiting for my kickback because I always watch your videos, so those at least count as clicks and views.
I was gonna go with probably if it's anything, and I know you have such a orders of magnitude larger following than we do, but I would just say that if it's anything like what we're talking about with us, it's probably in the neighborhood of 50 to $100. So
$872.
okay. I'm currently running in the negative for this, and so I'm like,
well, I haven't even subtracted my expenses.
Yeah, that's
actually,
right,
that
right,
is
right,
my
right.
gross ad revenue.
Right,
and
right,
then
right.
You figure, I have Canva Pro, I have a website that I pay for hosting and domain and all the things. So I'm definitely in the negative. Like, doesn't help my taxes, unfortunately. But,
No, I'm actually glad you
so
mentioned that because
yeah,
we
like
were
it's a
actually doing
lot.
inventory on that stuff, and I actually have to make sure I add that stuff on there. I forgot all about the custom,
It's
the vanity domain
exactly. It's a
and
lot.
email addresses.
And that's why I did my, I have like Google Workspace, for my site and everything. But when you really break down, and that's why my site looks so kind of rudimentary, because I did it myself. I don't
Yes,
have the money
right,
to invest in someone building me a splashy site, because that's not why it's there.
right.
It's there to provide resources for job seekers, because I absolutely hate watching people get taken advantage of. It's the INFJ in me. I will freak out. you know and so that's why I do it. So, but unfortunately we have created this like influencer economy where people are investing in the splashy website and the fancy graphics and the cartoons and the pictures and the chat GPTs and all the things, and they are turning it into a moneymaker.
Right.
I don't want to make money. I want
Right.
to make
Well,
other people successful. That's the
I don't want
difference.
to fault anybody for trying to make a living because everybody needs to make a living. You got to be able to put
Yeah,
food on the table. Where things go sideways is when you are taking advantage, when you're targeting people who are in a bad way.
exactly.
And
That's
literally,
my beef.
you're talking about the difference between somebody who is, maybe on unemployment, which incidentally, for
Yeah.
anybody who has never been on unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of money. And
Exactly.
if you've been laid off and your severance got, and if you got severance, you were lucky because now we've taken to a
Exactly.
whole new set of things, which is oh, well, last week I gave you an outstanding review, but this week you are a poor performer, so you're fired. Um, Now unemployment, that is a fraction of whatever it was you were making
100%.
and is barely going to get you by. So our my beef is with people who target people who are literally taking that you're
Yeah.
making somebody make a decision about whether or not to spend you
Yeah.
know $200-300 on groceries or $200-300 on some service that is being offered by somebody who actually worked in the industry for 1 or 2 years, and somehow they've declared themselves experts or wizards, if you will. Ron, I'm going to take to throwback to our previous episode where we talked about people using titles that are like real. Um, things like that, and those are the things I have issues with, and I get it because ultimately what this all becomes about, and the whole reason some of these conversations continue to happen, is because job seekers, when they're running into problems, they need to have somebody or something to blame.
Yeah.
They feel like they need to have something or somebody to blame, and for those people who are in that position, I'm going to make sure in the notes for this episode I include a link to a video on YouTube. If folks have never seen this before, I it I was introduced to it by something during my volunteering with the nonprofit that I volunteer for. It's a video on blame and what happens, the psychology of blame. It is a short video. It's hilarious, but it's also serious because it helps you understand the psychology of blame. It's from her name is Brene Brown.
Yes.
and it is an outstanding video. So I will link to it. I encourage everybody to watch it. It is one of the things that has helped change, personally, my life has been changed over the last several years because I've been introduced to some of this kind of content, and it's terrific. So I'm going to include that in here, but I do feel like it's great because blame becomes when you're in that position and you just feel frustrated, you feel angry, you're creeping into what might be desperation because you feel like you are not making progress. You see what's happening with your bank account and the fact that nothing is coming in, and it has to be somebody or something's fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it also becomes fuel for bad decisions.
Yes.
Everything you
Yes.
just described, right?
Yeah,
And
that's correct.
and people who we'll call them narcissistic psychopaths, because that really kind of falls into the definition of what people are doing to take advantage of others who are downtrodden or in a bad place, right? It's the bar to, first of all, is super, super low to call yourself a coach or an expert
That's
or
a
anything.
fact.
Okay.
Correct.
I've seen a lot of people posting things recently, which is, either an output of ChatGPT or just a regurgitation of something they read 2 weeks ago. They turned it into a flip book, using Canva. And then, suddenly they're the sage soothsayer who understands all this stuff. And, you look up their profile and, they're 2 years out of college and, and they've had a job at a Wendy's, but yet they're providing advice to job seekers, and, no shade on them for trying to do what they're doing, but don't position yourself as an expert in this space when you've really spent like zero time there. The other thing is this constant farming of people is so disappointing in LinkedIn. It's really, really sad. And you see people post a lot on scams. You see people post a lot about, I was offered a job, but I had to buy equipment and they wanted me to buy it from this one place and they were going to reimburse me. And that's a common one. And
Yep.
God, I wish people would just put that one to bed. The resume writing, the recruiter who's kind enough to send me to a friend who helped me make an ATS compliant resume. There's just so many. Amy's smiling on that one because I know that hits home for you. But there's just so much predatory things that are happening in social media right now, and it's really sad because there's a lot of amazing, really good people that are getting taken advantage of due to just a lack of knowledge. They just don't recognize the badness.
Yeah, that and Sam, you said something earlier too about like the scoring, right? And having these tools that can check your resume. I did a test. I tried out 2 very popular scanning sites with my own resume, with the job description that I was hired into with that resume. I never beat 50%. Okay. And that's fine. But I also got dinged for things like I swear to God, not having passion on my resume. That was apparently a very important keyword for this one system.
Okay.
And I literally had points deducted for not having passion on my resume. I also got credit for uploading my resume as a PDF. I have absolutely never in my life had a PDF resume. I have been Word since 1998. Okay. So that also was fake. There were also some areas that were grayed out that I couldn't access what the details of that was unless I put in my credit card, which I refuse to do because again,
no.
I lose money on my side hobby. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So that right there was enough for me. And I have screenshots. I made a video and I wrote a blog post about it. I included screenshots so y'all can go see for yourself exactly what I did and how I did it. But I don't trust those sites as far as I can throw them. That's number one. Number two, this has happened many, 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 many times in my career. These keyword optimized resumes, right? You know the ones. We take all the important keywords, we ask ChatGPT, what are the critical skills for this job? And we shove those keywords into random places or skills list or whatever. How many times do you think I have presented a resume like that to a hiring manager and a hiring manager rolled their eyes, sent it back to me and said, Amy, I have no idea what this person actually did. This person took a bunch of industry keywords they thought were going to be impressive. They shoved them into the resume with no context. I don't ever want to see this resume again. I will never talk to this person. That has happened repeatedly over the years at many companies. So let's again suspend logic, and let's pretend that there is some magic algorithm you have to get past. Then what? What do you think happens next?
Right.
Okay, so now let me play devil's advocate for you, Amy. Let's use Sam's organization as an example. He does not have a army of recruiters
Sure.
who are, let's assume he has a single with a shingle, or
Yeah.
maybe just a couple folks, and they post, they're going to fire Sam because they probably should, and then now they're going to repost Sam's job, and they get 1,500 resumes in a week. Okay, so as a recruiter who's sitting in that space, right? I think you and I talked a little bit about opportunities to make things a little bit easier for recruiters. The recruiter has to slog through 1,500 resumes that were for this particular position. And I think the industry average is 80 to 85% of the people that apply for roles today have absolutely no business in so doing.
Sure.
So arguably, you're going to have to go through 1,100 resumes of no's before you whittle that down. So, I mean, that's a pretty heavy lift for a recruiter to go through. I mean, your eyes would start to bleed after a certain amount of time.
Let's do some math.
There you go.
Let's say 1,500 is what we
Let's
want to
say
go.
1,500
So
resumes.
1,500, and
At
let's say
85%.
I take my time and I spend 10 seconds on each resume. So that's 15,000 seconds divided by 60 seconds in a minute. So 250 minutes divided by 60 minutes in an hour.
3.5 hours.
About 4 hours of work.
4 hours. Okay.
Now let's go, that number you just threw out there, that 10 seconds per CV. What are you scanning for in those 10 seconds?
Yep.
Because that's wildly important.
Yes, very. So I am looking specifically, I have almost a persona in my mind. I looked at a job description and I said, okay, this person is I always use this structural engineering example. I don't know why. It's the one that always comes to mind for me. It was a very fun role to fill. I actually hired many structural engineers in the early days of my current role. But so I had this structural engineering position, and there are some non-negotiable things. This person absolutely must have done high frequency, low frequency vibration testing. This person absolutely must understand Craig Bampton methodology. And this person absolutely has to have at least, a handful of years of experience in this actual field doing this actual thing, right? Because this is a senior person. So like we arm wrestled 5 years versus 3 years. I won. So I'm looking for experience in this field for at least a handful of years. I'm looking for Craig Bampton, like you understand it. You've called it out somewhere on your resume, not just as a keyword. I'm not looking for Craig Bampton in tiny white font. I'm looking for utilize Craig Bampton to do something with something. And I'm looking for both high frequency, low frequency, again, with the little extra of like, and this is what I did. I did it on, bathroom doors. I did it on a wing. I did it on spacecraft, whatever it might be. Right. So that's what I'm looking for. Now, here's the thing. So Ron, to your point, those 80% or so that aren't a fit, we have people applying from other countries. Okay, well, you got to be a US person too. That's another important bit of that persona I didn't mention, right? So I know that's going to be a non-starter unless they have specifically called out that they're a US person, which I highly recommend on top of your resume. I have interns. Well, gosh, I can pretty quickly surmise if you have 0 work experience and you are graduating at the end of the year that you don't have 5 years of experience. So that's an easy out. This person has absolutely none of those words or experiences anywhere on their resume, and they're actually a program manager. That's an easy out, right? So it's very, very easy to identify the absolute clear no's. And that's the intention of that first screen. So when I sit down and I carve out 4 hours at the end of my workday to go through all 1,500, which I never would because I go through them every day and they don't all hit at once, but we're going to pretend for the sake of math. I'm actually going through looking for 2 things: absolute no question clear yeses, absolute no question clear no's. Yeses immediately go to the hiring manager. Submit to resume review, submit to resume review, submit to resume review. Clear no's, immediate disposition. No, thank you, apply again. No, thank you, apply again. No, thank you, apply again. Okay, that's going to be the bulk of that first screen. Now, if I have a good number of folks who've gone to resume review, I'm probably going to just cut the job, take it off the posting, take down the external posting. I'm going to let those early resume reviews go through, see if I was right, if we got some good, might even make it higher from that. But I'm still going to go through the rest of the maybes, and I might find people that I want to call for more information. I might find people that are maybe a fit for a different position that they didn't apply to or something like that. So that's where a lot of people, I think, do get hung up because they've applied and they haven't heard anything back. And I totally get how frustrating that is. And I'm guilty of doing that myself because those are my really solid maybes. I'm not ready to say no. They're maybe, this is going to sound harsh, they're maybe not the absolute top choice, but they're good. They look good. They might be good for something, if not this. So it's a balancing act that recruiters also have to figure out. How do we communicate the right outcomes, the right, like, hey, you're good enough to be on the bench, as bad as that sounds.
Right.
It's a really tough balancing act, but yes, it is entirely possible to do it. And I think my record, I went through like 200 and almost 300. It was like somewhere around 287 or something like that, some really ridiculous number. I went through in like a 2-hour sitting. And I had to go through them twice because I was clicking the button for future activity, and then the page got refreshed and my button clicks went away. So I didn't know what to do and I had to go do it again. So that sucked. I could have done it in an hour otherwise. But I went through a big old list because I had a recruiter at the time who didn't believe that they would find a good applicant. I found 10 people in that list that immediately went to the hiring manager. They liked 5 of them. They interviewed 4 of them, and we hired 1 of them. So like there is so much value there, and in like just sitting down and taking the time to do that quick screen. And I wish more recruiters would do it. And I also wish more job seekers understood. We are looking through the lens of, does this person potentially solve the problem described in this job posting? That's it.
I think in general, we've gotten to become a culture where folks are looking for the hack.
Yeah.
Both on the recruiter side, because when we talk about the example of using ChatGPT to screen resumes,
Yeah.
I actually believe, and the post got taken down, but I don't almost believe that it was referred to as a hack.
Yeah. I'll check my screenshots later.
Yeah, I think it might have been referred to as a hack, but
I'm sure
then
it was.
the job seekers are doing the same thing, right? Job seekers have been told that the
Yes.
way to, here it comes again, hack the
Mhm.
ATS is to, as
Yeah.
you said, hide these keywords in small
Yeah.
white fonts on their resume, when the reality is, and we keep trying to drive this point home, we talk about using talking about results.
Mhm.
The additional, what you're adding to that recommendation is the keywords are important, not just as a skill or whatever,
Right.
but that there's results associated with them. It's
Absolutely.
not just about the keyword, it's about the context. What did
Yeah.
you do and what was the result of what you
Yeah.
did? That is going to be what matters. That's going to be what gets you. That's the difference between disposition
Yeah.
and at least making it to the maybes.
So, and here's another example of this, right? Like, who would you rather hire? Who would you rather interview? We're not even at the hiring stage yet. Who would you rather interview? You have someone who says, I'm highly proficient and an expert in Excel. Okay, so that's one person. Excel, got it. You're good at Excel. Then you have the person who says, I run a weekly Excel report with with pivot tables and macros, and I pull terabytes of data for an audience of 50 VPs.
Right.
Who's more interesting to you if you need somebody who's really good at Excel?
Right. Nope. That's absolutely true. And it coincides with the regular advice that has been given on, this program. And I think it's important for folks to see
Yeah.
that we generally acknowledge that there are a lot of experts out there.
You couldn't see that Sam was doing air quotes for those of you not watching on
Yeah.
video today.
Experts, yes, I know. That is
Experts.
definitely something that's coming though, because I did get asked about that. So starting with our last episode, we are going to start putting these up on YouTube because we do
Nice.
actually have a YouTube channel. I just have not done anything with it yet. So now that I've said that, I digress. There are a lot of experts out there. Folks do not know who to get their advice from.
Right.
And that's, I think, the reason why we see some of the things that get posted publicly on LinkedIn. And I think that's fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
I admittedly fall into the same category as them when I started my job seeking journey, last July. So I get it.
Yeah.
If you're listening to the program, then that means that you've decided that we're worth listening to and we're providing advice that is worthwhile. Thank you for that. And as I said, if you do not like the podcast and you want to give a bad review, remember my name is Joe Rogan. But the reality is make sure you're telling your friends, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there that are looking for jobs and they are taking advice from people who are not helping them. They're not helping themselves by taking some of this advice.
You just have to follow the money. Honestly, I mean, and again, Ron made an excellent point. I think you both have at different stages of the conversation about, people need to make a living. And I get that. And there are definitely people who do make a living as a coach, as a writer, as, whatever. And I don't have a problem with that as long as it's done ethically. And it's one of the reasons that I have a list on my website, because I don't have the bandwidth or the experience or the expertise to be a career coach. I could probably figure it out. I'd probably be better at it than half of these yahoos out here, but it's not my personal area of expertise. I speak from the seat of an active recruiter who's hiring people every day. But there are, unfortunately, as has been mentioned many times, a very low bar to entry. No one is policing this. There are no governing boards. There is no required education. There are no certificates that have any meaning. I mean, you can go buy a certificate. That's easy. Take a test. Anybody could be a certified resume writer. So it's very much trial and error. But if you follow the money and you look at it through the lens of like, who benefits if I take this advice? Who benefits if I purchase this deal? There's value. We apply value to things that cost us.
That's exactly right.
And so my advice gets ignored or universally like dismissed or panned or it gets me yelled at because it's free.
That's right.
So if it was valuable, I'd be sticking a, price on it, right? I don't need to.
That could fix your tax problem.
Right? You could fix my tax problem. But I am fortunately, I'm very lucky.
You're actually, that is an excellent point, because I know we've all fallen into the position of saying, listen, you get what you pay for, and if this is free, then it's probably not particularly good advice. Okay, that's a valid and fair argument. Understand that there are people, though, that genuinely are altruistic.
Yeah.
Genuinely. And if you aren't sure, then here's what I would say. Take the extra time to look at somebody's profile. For example, if you were to pull up my profile and you hear me keep saying that we are offering free advice, and it's good advice, and yes, it's free.
Yeah.
Why would we offer it for free? Why would I offer it for free if it wasn't, if it was good? Why wouldn't I charge somebody for it? Really, really simple. If you look at my history, you will find I have a history of volunteering for the better of my neighbors.
Yeah.
I fought fire for 10 years.
Yeah. I
served on a board of education, did not get any, I definitely was not getting paid for that. I volunteered for nonprofits time and time again. I make a decent living I don't need to do this for that.
Exactly.
At this point, I'm doing it because I see people I know and I respect getting taken advantage of, and that is
Absolutely.
unacceptable to me.
I'm with you on that. I could be quiet. I could go sit in my little corner and never talk to anybody ever again outside of my job and be just fine. It doesn't impact my paycheck. It doesn't impact my home life. It has absolutely zero bearing on anything. But there is also a selfish component, because if I'm able to educate people on how to apply smarter, interview more effectively, negotiate offers faster, I guess who's making offers and getting people hired quicker and more efficiently? So it is like I am giving you the cheat codes of how I want you to show up if you're ever interviewing with me. I have people use my offer negotiation tips on me all the time, and I love it. And the people who tell me, hey, Amy, I binged watched your videos before I interviewed, have the highest performances in those interviews. The people who tell me, hey, I watched your video on how to negotiate, here's what I want. It's almost always a quick and easy and painless process that everybody's happy with at the end. Like, I put this information out there, one, to help, because like you, Sam, I hate watching people get taken advantage of, but two, to help myself.
That's right.
I'll admit it. There is a selfish angle here.
No, it's totally worth it. And you can't tell folk, I mean, listen, we can't force people to listen to this stuff.
Absolutely.
And so while we continue to look at what's happening on LinkedIn and see the same things happening over and over again, we will continue we need to just templatize it somehow. I need to have a set of canned templates in one of my notebooks for how to respond to this, that, and the other. So that's what I need to do. But
I love it. Please share once you build that. I think we could all use it.
I know, that's right. That's right. Well, we're coming up on time. So I want to say thank you again. You were very generous with your time for joining us. We really, really appreciate you coming out. I think we need, if possible, and you're agreeable, we want to make this a regular thing. So,
I love it.
Certainly, you like us more than once a quarter. So we will try to figure out a schedule that's workable for all of us. Because certainly we do this in the morning on the West Coast, and that's fine. But Ron's out east, and it's already lunchtime where he's at. So we'll find a way to make that happen. So thank you so much for being generous with your time and sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me. You are all doing good work, important work, and I appreciate you letting me tag along. So
we talk. You're an absolute pleasure.
Yes,
and,
absolutely, absolutely.
I chase you on Slack all the time, just for the interaction.
Gotta get better at cleaning that up.
But no, it's all good. Look, at the end of the day, you are super busy with Kuiper, and I'm wildly impressed with what you've been able to accomplish with that. I'm looking forward to Kuiper as an opportunity from a satellite comms perspective to compete with Starlink, and I think it's really going to be a feather in your cap for the people you've hired and brought into this company to do this work and to get that first launch. I know it was pushed back due to weather. Yeah. But I know we're from a date time perspective, this is happening in mid-April, so of 2025. So we're expecting continued amazing things coming from your group. So thank you for doing that. And we understand how busy you are, and carving out time for us is awesome.
Yes,
it is.
I do want you to noodle on something between now and the next time we talk.
Okay.
So we talked about how not to use AI in the recruiting.
Yes.
But I would love to have a conversation next time, and I'm not writing this down, Sam. I would love to have a conversation next time.
I am
on
actually
where you envision AI that would be helpful to you from streamlining the recruiting side of the business.
Oh, that's a whole episode. Yes,
exactly. So I would love your thoughts on that next time. Would be fantastic.
I did capture that, so I am totally doing that.
Next time on
next time when we get back
when
together
to use
again.
AI as opposed to when not to use AI.
Exactly, because it's not going away. I think we all know that it's going to exist in some form or fashion. I think the genie's already out of the bottle, so now we just have to harness it and use it in the right ways that do not harm. It's which rule is it? First, second, or third? No harm, right?
Do no harm.
Do no harm. Yeah. Yeah.
Father of science fiction himself told us this how many years ago? So
Amazing. So much happening so quickly.
yeah, good stuff, gentlemen. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, so glad to have you. It really so great.
Hey, you're setting the bar, so like other people you bring on. I
Future
have to s-
guests are gonna have a hard time.
I'm telling you, you haven't seen the one we did last week with T, author, Ghost Chaser. He was just an
Okay.
amazing interview. But
Fun.
we still like our Kuiper, our Kuiper
That's right.
recruiter.
That's right. Thank you all again for listening. We will be back very, very soon with the next episode. So for Amy Miller, who our wonderful guest, my very good friend and co-host Ron Melanson, I am Sam Cavaliere. Thank you all for listening, and please take care of one another. It is the only way we will get through everything that is going on. So thank you, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Currents Podcast. The Tech Currents Podcast is hosted by Sam Cavaliere. All content and views expressed as part of the Tech Currents Podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the podcast platform, any employment organizations, or any affiliated entities. This podcast is informational purposes and should not be considered for professional, legal, or financial advice. Please consult with your qualified, licensed experts for your specific needs. This is Daniel Iverson. Thank you for listening.